It was 6 o'clock the night before, and I got the email that everything was canceled. Somebody on their set had been confirmed that they had the virus, so they just shut everything down. That was for Friday the 13th, March 13th, and that whole weekend, one by one, all of Hollywood started to shut down.
Wow.
So my life as an actor has been primarily going out to auditions. My job is to get a job. So I go out every day. It could be for a whole range of things. It could be modeling. It could be television, commercials, film, the whole gamut. But ever since everything shut down, I realized as much as I thought otherwise, I was running on adrenaline. It was this little high. I'm like, oh, I got an audition. Well, that destroys my plan for the day or puts it off. And depending how long the drive is, because all we do in Los Angeles is drive. And then,
I heard.
Right, at parking. So you're like in the car, you're dealing with traffic, you're dealing with time. Of course, nobody wears a watch anymore. And then you're dealing with where am I going to park? And then you're dealing with, do I have my lines memorized? You know, am I right for that? Who else is up for this? And then you got to drive back home. So without all of that, I've been able to focus on other things, like my business, which is coaching actors. And it's really been a pleasure for me to not have my day interrupted. And then I started to think, oh my gosh, does that mean I don't want to be an actor? Am I just like over it? Like, no, that can't be right. So that started getting a lot of discussions going. There's so much discussion going online with other actors and people in the industry. And a lot of us feel guilty for enjoying our time off. But what we're realizing, it's not a time off from acting, but a respite from the business. It's so arbitrary, it's so random. People say, oh, I could never be an actor, I can't deal with the rejection. And I don't think of it as rejection. It's just like, I try, bing, oh, I got a job. I try, bing, oh, I got a job. But if you start to think about it too much, then it turns into rejection. But what we're starting to think about now is not so much the rejection, but the ridiculousness of the setup, the ridiculousness of the game. And the game is a good chunk of us will spend a good portion of our lives in training because we love the craft for years and doing free acting, mostly stage, or freebies for, you know, when we're starting out, or commercials or whatever. And all of that investment because we love it so much. And then we come to a point where now we're in the big pond. We're in Hollywood. We go to these auditions and then we see like close up the ridiculousness of it with all of our preparation, with all of our following the rules of this is the way you have a headshot, this is the way you have a demo reel, this is the way you show up, this is the way you introduce yourself, this is where you say you've trained. It all comes down to getting a job. Not all comes down to, but so often it comes down to getting a job based on how somebody feels that day. You know, is the casting director in a good mood? If they are, that's great. You do a good audition and they help you. If they're not, you don't do such a good audition and you wonder, what did I do wrong? And if you get past the casting director, then the producers are looking at you. And they're not looking at you so much as, at least on my level, who the best one is. They're looking at you as like, well, who's going to match this scene, this commercial? Who looks best in this like big picture? So that's so random. But now, I think when we're slowed down, we're realizing how much power we've given over to that. So we know it intellectually, oh yeah, it's a game and this is the way it is and it's all random. But as we slow down, we're like,
wait a
wait a
minute.
minute. Because the first thing that happened when production shut down was casting directors. Now we affectionately call them the gatekeepers. The casting directors are the ones who call us in. If they don't call us in, we don't get to be seen by the directors and the producers. So these gatekeepers started going online saying, hey, upload a scene on tape. Do we still call it, why do we call it tape? Do a self-tape, and we're accepting anybody. So people who've not even broken into the business, people who don't have agents, people who've been in the business for a while, we're like, I'll get in front of their face again. Sure, I'll do the self-tape. And then one by one, all of these casting directors were doing that. Please send me this. Send me a monologue. Send me this scene. Send me your reel. Send me. And then they started getting these weird criteria of, I want you to send this, but only in this category. And when you send it, it has to be in this format. And then in this format, I need you to send it in this order. And then actors were like, what? That's when we're like, hey, wait a minute. They're not working, just like we're not working. They're in the same boat. Now the playing field is level. Also, what's happened is now we had been self-taping either from studios or from our homes before, but not so often. Now it's mandatory. You can't get out of it. So people who did not set up their home studio were scrambling. Some of them still are, because if you don't have a home studio, you are out of the game. But now they're also, the actors are able to see themselves, because we get to see ourselves now before we submit. Unlike going into the audition, where we just do the audition live, they put us on tape and they decide which was our best take. So we're learning autonomy. We're also learning self-coaching. We're also learning there's more than one way to skin a cat. There was a young woman online the other day, and she was desperately trying to pitch herself for a television show. And she couldn't get the information, the email for the director. So she's asking around, and somebody said, just call their office. It's on IMDb. And she said, but I just get an email, a voicemail. And they said, well, just leave a voicemail. And I said, no, not with sales. Sales, you don't leave a voicemail. You keep calling until somebody picks up and you speak to them live. And she said, but if they're all out of the office, how do I speak to them live? How is anyone going to pick up? And I said, you got to be creative. You got to explore. Then you walk away. You come back and you do it again. And I think this was the first time that anybody, that would be me, said this on this particular forum, because the forum is based on a particular acting coach's, business of acting coach, their strategy. So they have like a list of how you can get work. First you do this, then you do this, then you do this, then you do that. And while it felt empowering for those actors to follow that list and then get a job, none of them were told that they can do this without a list. And I know I'm not the first person to feel that, the first actor to feel that. But I think I was the first one in this particular forum to say that.
I mean, I love this story. There's so much, that I think you can see that it's sort of true in any circumstance, not just in the acting or what you're saying. Like the first thing that struck me was how sometimes we just don't see kind of the edges, the limitations, and the rules we're playing by. We just don't see them until something like this happens. But I get anything that can snap us out, like, hang on a second. Like another way of saying it is that I think we base our life, our work on a lot of givens, right? Well, like given that that's how it's done, and given that you need to audition to get the job, and given that, how? So we try to innovate, but within this little box of boundaries, and as long as we don't see them as such, we're never gonna really kind of think out of this box because we don't know there is one. And I think that was pretty cool to notice, to say like, oh, so you guys kind of slow down and say like, wait a minute, this is not really making sense, is it? But this happens in business a lot. I know, like, we cannot keep going and like, yeah, because that's the way we do things and that's the way it's done. And that's somehow like, the role of a coach, and sometimes just go in, slow people down and have a look. And they're the first to have a look and say, hey, why are we doing it this way? So that's really interesting, because I think for the guys watching, I think it could be interesting to kind of reflect for themselves of what might be certain of these givens and boundaries that are invisible for now for them, that they're playing in.
Yeah, I think the thing that sticks out for me, the limits, the boundaries as far as the acting business, is the boundaries of my role as an actor.
All right. Well,
right?
Yes.
We have decided or accepted that an actor doesn't have power.
It's funny. I was talking with another actor last week. I was saying pretty much the same. But again, this is the power of, because you see now you're saying it and you're seeing it, and it's like, oh, why would we do that? But until you see it, it's invisible, and you just like, oh no, that's what actors do, or that's what writers do. I have writer's block because I'm a writer. Whatever. I'm working on a book. Well, that's how you do it, because that's how it works. And then you have to find the publisher. Or am I starting a business? That's how you do. You need to find the investor, and the investors want to see this, and this, and you don't see all the rules.
Yeah.
That you're accepting, and you're playing in the little context of those rules. And you don't have to. That's the cool thing, to realize that you don't have to once you kind of wake up to that.
Yeah.
And the other point that you mentioned that I thought was really cool was the kind of the last one was about human. I think it's cool how you explain, like, it feels empowering at the beginning to kind of like, oh, give me the steps. I follow the steps, and maybe sometimes it works and I feel like, yeah, but really I think that, as you're saying, in that way, we're not really discovering that we can do it without it, which is actually the empowering part. Because I think if you start knowing that regardless of what's happening, pandemic or not, you can bring this level of creativity and find a new solution and think out of the box, then once you can rely on that, you're much less victim, if you want, of what's happening outside.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. And I was going to go deep right away.
Go, please.
And then you're God.
I'm glad you went deep.
It's such a relief. Like, oh, I set this up. I can play however I want.
And that sounds more empowering to me, if you know, more than the following the steps kind of.
Yeah. You know, before we went live, you and I were talking about when I did improv in Amsterdam. And the reason I got into improv, I had gone to a theater conservatory right out of high school. And it was great. I loved it. But first year was fantastic. First year, actually, our acting class, we weren't allowed to use a script at all the entire year until the very end, because we were studying Viola Spolin improv, which is more for theater. It wasn't really comedy. The very first week, our teacher said to us, because we were asking, because he was giving us these exercises that like, we're like, what are we doing? We don't get it. How are we supposed to, how do you do that? He'd say, don't ask how-to questions. And that lesson stayed with me my entire life. Second year, started getting a script. We started at scheduled rehearsals. Third year, we were in the casting pool. Now it was like a little more competitive. And I had to leave. I left the conservatory. I took a leave of absence. Several months later, I thought, I need to get out of my head because I am so in my head. So I just randomly, because a friend of mine went to study at the Second City in Chicago, I'm like, I'm going to go take some improv classes just to get out of my head. My whole world opened up. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm home. Everything that I've learned with improv applies directly to life. And I've kind of kept that little secret within the circles of longtime improvisers. But then when I started getting introduced to the three principles, I'm like, holy crap, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. So it was such a natural place for me to fall into the three principles, because what I love about improv is that there's no predetermined anything. You walk on the stage, you say, give us a suggestion. And they'll go, toothbrush, and a whole scene and relationship and environment and activity will evolve and grow from toothbrush. There's just this place of standing on the edge of I don't know what, that I love to jump off.
That is so cool, and actually would love to kind of hear more about this, because to me, what fascinates me is that you said, you know, there is no scripted anything, right? There are no rules, and at the same time, there's a learning curve, and that balance, because I think in my experience, when people kind of start looking in this direction, they're like, oh, okay, so basically I sort of, you know, there's nothing for me to do here. I'm just gonna kind of see what happens. But it seems to me like, yes, as in living a scripted life, it's a confined life. But it doesn't mean that we don't have ways to kind of get more and more comfortable in that unknown, getting in a deeper and deeper relationship with our kind of this emerging wisdom. And I'd love for you to speak to that, and just gotta quickly see, because we got a bunch of comments. Yeah, so Cedar was saying, what we were saying, there's an opportunity during this whole pandemic to wake up to the rules and constructs we don't normally see, which I think it's pretty cool. And I love for you guys to kind of reflect on what those might be in your area, in your life. And Jackie says, standing on the edge of I don't know what. I love that. But yeah, that's a pretty cool feeling. And again, you know, I think that's a cool question. I don't know. I think it's a cool question to ask herself, regardless. Is like, you know, where am I at? You know, am I on the edge right now? Am I standing on that edge of going just beyond what I know? Or am I kind of in the thing? And I don't think one is necessarily right or wrong, but I think developing a sense of where we stand is just so valuable. Because when we start feeling like, you know, I don't have ideas, I don't know, I feel stuck, it's so good to know that we are really far from that edge and we can reach the edge whenever we want to. And so that's cool. I see just one question that was more related to the first part. So I'm going to ask you this one from Jackie, and then we'll dive into this improv thing. So she was saying, as the country starts slowly opening back up, how is it looking in the acting world? Will it stay closed for longer than other professions since actors can't wear masks?
Well, some of it has stayed open. So there's a whole range of things. The commercial world, commercials are still plugging through because what they're doing is they're having actors shoot themselves with either their phones, or they're sending them professional equipment, or they're making sure that the quarantined actors are living with somebody who can handle a camera. They're being very, very creative with commercials. So while that's still open, you're still limited to, you must be able to show to the agency that you're able to do this in your own home. I've been excluded from that because primarily they're looking for people who are quarantined with roommates or family. And I'm alone because commercials want to create a feeling. You're always selling a feeling, right? So you want to feel good to buy their product, so they want you to be with friends and family. Well, I'm alone, so that doesn't feel, but it feels good to me. I'm glad I'm alone, but it doesn't feel good to the selling. So I'm going too deep into that. But there is a very healthy conversation going on about television and film. Television and film, they still have their own rules. It looks like film is going to start opening sooner than television, but it's trickling in. Oh, it's so tiny, because the unions are figuring out their own safety protocols, in addition to what our governor and our mayor are giving us as well. So it all depends. The big hopeful deadline is the fall. The show that I was supposed to shoot back in March, the whole network has decided that they're going to start reshooting their television shows in January 2021. So here's the thing. Everybody's hoping for the fall, but we're also waiting for that second wave. It's flu season in the fall, early winter. So nobody knows, but everybody's talking about it. Everybody's kind of sneaking in.
You know, I think it's so crazy how, like, I guess if we had to imagine, you know, if this didn't happen, but we were making up a scenario, you were like, oh, but imagine if a virus arrives and, you know, and people are shut down. And I don't think that anyone, no, the actors or the commercials people or whatever, you know, could have thought, you know, of all this dynamic kind of readjustment and, oh, well, we could try this and that. If we were looking at it on a theoretical level, we were like, oh, well, then actors are fucked, you know. If that happens, that's it. And to actually see that in the moment when even the worst case scenario happens, as people we have, if we have a, you know, if we kind of stand for a clear mind, we have the capacity of like have a different, you know, see it in a different way and do a different thing, and then suddenly things start readjusting. and they usually start doing it in very quickly, relatively quickly, if you think about it. And I think it's just so cool to see that all the ideas, all the things you're talking about, just I think they would not have come up if we were just imagining this.
Oh, absolutely not. The imaginations, oh my gosh, the things that we have done, and I don't mean just actors, in order to adapt, nobody could make us do if there wasn't a virus.
Yeah.
But now we're forced to, because before the virus, if somebody told us we had to stay inside, we had to be quarantined, people would give all the reasons why it's impossible.
Yes.
I can't, it's just impossible. It's impossible. But because we have to, we've made it possible.
Yeah, and like this is such a freeing thing. I think if when we see it, the more we really see it, the less we're gonna be tempted to kind of, look, 10 steps ahead and worry about like, yeah, but if this happens, because the thing is, it probably won't happen. But if it does happen, you're just gonna be so much better in the moment because you're gonna have access to all this creativity that you won't see from here.
Yes.
So
that's
right.
And that's what I love about improv, because a lot of people have a hard time with improv because they're afraid that they're not going to come up with anything. And if they don't come up with anything, it's because they're in their head.
Yeah.
Right? What should I say next? What should I do next on stage? You start thinking that way, your scene is done. I had a great teacher. He still teaches nationwide. I'm sorry, worldwide. He said once, people ask me, well, how do I get out of my head? He said, you get out of your head by getting into your heart. Which is, to us, pay attention to what I'm feeling.
Yeah. It's just so, so simple in one way. And I think most people who watch this, or anything like this, and will say like, yeah, totally, yeah, that makes sense, yeah. But then, we kind of the webinar is finished, and you're back into, yeah, I know, but I really can't figure it out. And that is the thing. That is the importance of seeing rather than just kind of getting the idea. If we can all nod and like, yeah, well said, Doreen, I like it, look into your heart. But there's a difference, we're actually stopping, slowing down and say like, no, really, what Michael was saying, no, really. To really kind of like, that's it. Because and people say, yeah, I got it. No, because if you did get it, you would not now worry about what to say tomorrow at the meeting. Right? Or how am I going to convince the investors, or how am I going because if you really see it, you're like, oh, that's how it works. I show up, I do things, and and I kind of play as I'm doing. I was listening to a masterclass with Mara Gleason from Solution, and she was saying something like, I think she was quoting some of their clients, whatever, but this image was, it feels like we are in an airplane that is half built. We were already flying in this airplane, and we're building it as we fly.
Yes.
And this person was like, yeah, but are we ever gonna be to a point where we're actually flying the built airplane? And that's not the point, because as you keep building it as you fly, but the more you build, the more the airplane changes shape. And the cool thing is you're flying, and you don't need the full airplane to fly. And I mean, it's such a cool thing. And
I mean, I was doing it, trying to pre-plan this morning. I'm like doing my hair, and I'm like, maybe I should talk about this. Maybe I should talk about that. Did he want me to talk about that? And I'm at the point where I don't have to work at not thinking about it. I just have to notice it. I'm like, I'm doing it. Just let it go. I'm doing it. Just stop it.
I know what you say, because it's really is in the feeling. It's in getting a taste for it. It's really, because again, we hear this stuff and we kind of turn it into, oh, let's make sure that we don't think about the future. No, it's easier than that. You kind of just start sensing, am I at the edge? Am I playing on the edge of the unknown? Am I playing somewhere else? Am I in my head? Cool. But just knowing it, noticing it, just does the trick. And I don't know how you see it, because at the same time, I don't know, does it ever happen now? I have an idea. In improv, does it ever happen you guys have some sort of pointer, like, is it always fully free, we show up and we have no idea? Or could there be like, okay, but
Oh yeah, there's rules, but the rules are there just to create shape of what we're performing. So there's short form, which is jokey, fast. There's long form, which is more thoughtful. And within long form, there's all kinds of different, we'll call them games. So we know the rules of those games, but I think the rules in improv are set up to demolish our limitations.
I'm loving this one.
So one of the, if you're a first year improviser, one of the first rules you're going to get is don't deny. Once you learn that, you realize how throughout your whole day you say no. And then you start to question it. And then you start to, at least for me, it's like, The epitome of that is that Jim Carrey movie, Yes Man, where he says yes to anything. So if you want to see the epitome, the extreme of that, it's really fun. So the first rule is don't deny. And what a great thing to bring into real life. Like if somebody calls you and says, hey, I really need your help. Can you drop everything you're doing and come over? And your first instinct is, no, I've got my stuff to do. Well, what is that stuff? And why not see what's over there? Apparently they need you. I don't know, maybe that's a terrible example. But as far as like doing a scene, imagine if like I was on stage with somebody and they said, the first line out of the scene that we're improvising, and they said, hey mom, I'm back from school. And I'd say, you're not my son. And they'd say, yeah, I mom, like, yeah, you need to leave. Mom, I've got homework to do. Yeah, I don't know who you are. I'm gonna cook. Okay, denial. So if the actor came in and said, hey mom, I'm home. Oh, thank God. Clean the bathroom. Mom, look, your father left us and now I don't have anyone to clean the bathroom anymore. So now we're creating a whole scenario. I mean, that's how can I improvise with myself? I know people can. I know people are brilliant.
Advanced level.
They're really good.
I just jump in because I think there are two things I wouldn't want to miss because they were super cool. One is, rules, a container, can be there to actually be a catalyst for the creativity, to actually destroy limitation or demolish the limitation. I love how you said it. And that, for example, can be, okay, I have a talk. I have to give a talk, or I have a meeting. It's so easy to turn what we said before into like, okay, so you're never supposed to even think about that meeting. You just need to always go there and see what happens. But the thing is, it's okay. And I'm finding, for example, that the same creativity in the moment might tell you, hey, why don't you sit now 10 minutes or whatever, why don't you take some time now and kind of look at the context, for example. You can start thinking, okay, well, hang on, like I have 18 minutes, it's a TED Talk, and I have 18 minutes, and I don't know, those are the three things I want to, the three things I want to share. That also can become something that sparks creativity. So again, I think it's a lot to say about how we, what rules we're using, of course, because if we look in terms of, this is like this, if there's this sense of, finality, or like, okay, well, like this can't happen. That's not a rule. That's just, again, a given, a premise that we made up. But if we can play with like, okay, you know what? Why do I not create for myself a little context? So then when I go there tomorrow, I'm free to play. I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
Right. So that's so cool. I love that thing. And by the way, your yes and was mentioned also in a comment. Someone said,
yeah.
I played an improv game called Yes and. The idea is to never contradict others' reality, only add to it. I loved it. So that's what you were talking about.
And yeah, that's another favorite rule. That's another first level rule. Yes, and. So whatever anyone offers us, we,
You
they
build
can
up,
say,
yeah.
yeah, the sky is blue, and I can say yes, and it looks like it's going to rain. Somebody, right? Don't just say yes, and expand.
And the thing is, what you were saying also about don't deny, what brought to mind when you kind of were bringing in the context of real life, of the rest of the life, is that, to me, what I heard is that when we stop, fighting reality, when we stop being in conflict with reality, we become so much more creative. Right? Like when we stop being like, yeah, but I don't know. One for me would have been, I have the kid and I have all these medical appointments because of this and that, and I can, I can't focus. Like I would see this, and I would go against it. I would sort of be like, no, this is not cool. But if I can stop resisting and being in an argument with reality and just be like, okay, yes, and here's what I can do, and here's what comes up, and I think it's cool. And I don't know why, it probably doesn't make sense, but in the example of, can you help me out? And you said like, I have my stuff. But even I guess a no, it's one thing is like, yeah, no, because so okay, I'm thinking, okay, my friend asked me this. And rather than fighting this, I can welcome it, right? And see what emerges. And it might be like, hey buddy, can we do it this evening? Because I have to finish 3 things. Or,
Yeah.
But it's a completely different creative space versus just being having arguments with reality. Really, it feels like that.
Absolutely. The novice improviser is addicted to conflict. So when they get on stage, they immediately want to start a conflict. And that's denial. That's not yes-anding. Now, let's go on to the third rule of improv. And this is why it's all so beautiful, and it all comes into, I'm going to say, the third beginner's rule of improv. This is why it all comes in together with the 3 principles. Don't ask questions. When
Say
you're
more.
when you're on stage and somebody yells, toothbrush, okay, and then you're with an actor and they say, good evening, Sister Prudencia. I understand your students are acting up this week. And I'd say, who are you? Oh, I'm the inspector. I'm part of the police department. We have some of your children in jail. Which children? Felicia, Sam, Kevin. Why are you here? Okay, that just ruins the whole scene. Question after question after question, right? Hey, Sister Prudencia, some of your students are unruly. I'm ashamed. I'm a bad Catholic. Tell me what my penance is. You know, I'm not asking any questions. I'm developing my character. I'm opening him up. I've given him something now. And he could say, well, good thing I'm a police officer because we're going to have to lock you up for having unruly children. Then I have to yes and him. I will go down to the station with you, officer. I deserve it. It is my penance. But please, let me take my rosaries. And then now we have an object to play with. And now we're going down to the station because at improv, you're suddenly at the station.
Yeah. And I wonder really, well, you know, what if that's like, what if we could sort of be in this dialogue, improvising in life with life, you know, where life throws something and you're kind of like, oh yeah, and this is what I do. And then life throws you like this medical appointment. It's like, okay, well, whatever. And then the interview that pops up out of nowhere, but then it's a no. And then there's this encounter, because it seems like it's this responsiveness.
Yeah.
But again, if we stuck into like, yeah, but you know, why did it happen? And
Yes.
you know, what we immediately stopped creating. We're, you know, so I can see that. I have a question because I got intrigued. Like, so you're talking about beginner rules.
I'm sorry?
You're talking about beginner rules.
Yes.
Of
Well, it's also the foundation.
Yeah. What happens as you evolve? Like, what's kind of like?
Okay. Well, here's the thing. When you evolve, and when I used to teach, I used to tell my students, until you've been improvising consistently for 3 years, you are not allowed to break the rules. Then after that, you can break the rules. Right? So, for instance, when a seasoned improviser comes up against somebody denying their reality on stage, they know it's just a game. And then they start playing with it. They're not put off by it. It feeds into this game. When questions are asked, again, now it's an opportunity. It's not a limitation. Once we realize that we can answer in any way we want.
Can I say that, like, what I think is super powerful is, and I mean, now I'm simplifying, but what I heard you say is like, well, really the difference between a novice and a seasoned, experienced, masterful improviser is they know it's just a game. That is, you know, that to me, that's kind of really, in a way, true about life, you know, like, I guess the more, I guess, I don't like to talk in terms of, you know, novice or experienced lifers, but it seems that people that start really having a great experience of life, they do well overall. They have their highs and lows, but to me, it's true that probably the variable, the one thing that makes the difference is they know it's just a game. And they show up like that. It's not anymore like, okay, so you know what, I have to remember what's the rule, and then tomorrow is the meeting. You're kind of like, oh, okay. And Siddhar asks, in the game and out of it, can you say more? I'm not sure I don't know, do you get the question? In the game and out of it. Yeah, if you want us to write more, we'll look into it. So there is this, thank you for asking. And by the way, like, because we have this last 15 minutes, if you guys have more questions, keep writing, and I'm gonna keep reading. Oh, there's one. It's an interesting question. So, do you have advice for staying in the game, for not getting yourself out of it?
Yeah, just show up. I have these little videos on YouTube called Just to Be Clear. And at the end of each one, I say, Quit thinking so much. Just show up and play. That's true in life. That's true in improv.
You know, from the question and also from your answer, like what I'm hearing, I think it's interesting is that you see, I guess as long as it looks like you said it at the beginning, you know, don't ask how to questions in a way, but you know, as long as it looks like,
Well, you can ask a how-to question.
yeah, no, of course, but to say, I guess as long as it looks to us like, you know, how to stay in the game, and I get it. I think as when I read it, I liked it, and I think it's a super cool thing to explore. But what I noticed, there is also the thing of saying like, oh, it's cool to notice that being in the game still looks like a thing, you know, like a thing I
Oh,
do.
like being in the game is actually like the result. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm just saying it seems that really as we kind of show up this way to life, we start seeing like, oh, really, I'm always in the game in a way,
Right.
right? And just sometimes I don't realize it.
Yes.
And in those moments where I'm not that clear, then it looks like I'm out, and then I ask myself, how do I get in? But really, you're always in. It's just you're either aware of
Yes.
it or not. That's what it
Yeah.
is.
Can I take that back to improv?
Yeah, please.
So, like the reason that novice improvisers are addicted to conflict on stage is because they think that they have to constantly be talking, that they constantly have to be giving offers and maybe even being funny. Whereas a seasoned improviser knows the value of silence on stage and listening. And it becomes so much more powerful. We're still in the game. I've done scenes where we've had absolutely no words, and it's brilliant because we're still in the game.
Wow. And kind of what I'm seeing fresh, what I really like is that, and also to Alison's question, which I appreciate, because I guess the one of the best things we can do to ourselves is to really see that in life that really all of it is part of the game, and that you know we don't need to be a certain way to be in the game in a way like we don't have to, in the case of the improv, kind of always, you know, fill in the silence and always say something new, and that it's okay when right now I it's not, you know, right now it's silence, and that's powerful. Actually, it turns out that sometimes the thing we don't do even in life, the things we don't say are have that power when we kind of give permission to ourselves that that's okay too, you know what I mean? And I believe that from that space, usually then even more powerful action emerges. And I guess on
Oh
stage,
yeah. Oh
even a more
yeah. Yeah.
powerful sentence comes up.
Yeah. Yeah. I can spot a novice improviser in what looks like a good scene objectively right off the bat. And here's the difference. A novice improviser in their scene will invent. They'll start in their head creating a backstory about, oh, I'm here because of this and that. And the other day you did this. And remember those things that happened? And they're inventing. Whereas a seasoned improviser discovers. And it's through observation and feeling and listening that they didn't see a moment before. They'll discover.
I'll ask you, would you say more on this? Like, how do you see this distinction? So inventing versus discovering in life? Because I think it's pretty cool.
Oh my God. Well, inventing. I think we're all masters at inventing, right? And let me give you a great thing that happened to me. Like, it was the first time that it clicked in, like the three principles. I was sick. I was in Chicago. It was over Thanksgiving. I have an agent out there, and we had just had a snowstorm. I was supposed to go visit my agent. I was supposed to go drop in and say hello to a casting director. But it was a long distance from where I was staying with family, and I was sick. And I kept thinking, I got to get better by Monday. I got to get better because I got to go do this and then I realized I don't have to do that. My body's saying just rest. And oh my God, the stress just went away. As soon as I made that decision to just rest, my agent sent me an audition. And I looked at it. And there were so many reasons why I was never going to book it, why I shouldn't go. And I was in my old way of thinking of like, I got to tell them, I can't, I'm sick, I'm wrong for the part, I can't, I'm too young for the role, I'm not fluent in Spanish, and I'm too far away, I don't know how I'm going to get there. And then I thought, wow, that's a lot of making stuff up. So I was inventing. I was inventing how I was wrong, how I was this, how I was that. And I'm like, you know what? If I go, even though I know I'm wrong for the role, I'm gonna do my agent good. I won't have to visit them, and I will go in to see the casting director for a legit reason, for an audition. Awesome. I didn't know how I was gonna get there, but I made that decision. As soon as I made that decision, my brother-in-law offered to drive me to my next destination. I'm like, oh, that's awesome, thank you. So I show up. As I'm leaving to go to that audition that I'm completely wrong for, I get another audition for that same day for a commercial. The first one was for television. And I'm like, oh, okay, because now I'm in the role of like, yes, and all right, I'm just gonna go, I'm gonna do it. I show up to the first one, and then I show up to the second audition, then I'm having lunch at some pub, and I get a message from my agent. He said, they want to put you on hold for that television show. I laughed so hard because 2 days prior, I decided I wasn't going to get cast. I was wrong, and there was no way I could get out there. And I called him. I said, okay, I'll do it, but they got to give me more money because that means I got to stay longer. He goes, okay. So he calls back later and he said, you booked it, but I couldn't get you more money. All right. But now you have 3 days. It was only supposed to be 1 day of work, but it's 3 days. I'm like, what? But one of the days, the middle day, I didn't have to work. It was just the way the rules went. I only had to work those 2 days. So the middle day, I got to goof around downtown, seeing all the sights with my sisters. It's great. And I got paid for it. And on the third day, I got double overtime. And I got to meet a lot of old Chicago friends that I hadn't seen in years, some in 20 years. So I had first invented all of this stuff, but all along the way, I had to stop myself from, let's see what happens. Let's explore. Let's see. And that just like affirmed everything of what we're learning.
And that's, I really love this distinction, and because I think it really drives home the point, of like how much stuff. And to me, it's almost like, but what if this and what if this, and then I can't almost like hear a voice and say like, you know what, why don't you just go and find out? That's discovery. That's really like, I think, again, in this program, most people have something they want to sort of kind of bring forward in the world. They want to kind of share something. They have their work, whether again it's in the form of a book or a project or their work. And often there is this like, yeah, but I have resistance because I'm afraid. There is this sense of fear, and really, what that is saying is really like, look, I'm making up a lot of really scary things that would happen when I do this, and I'm scared. And the thing is, I don't think it's even about convincing ourselves that these scary things won't happen. It's just saying like, do you just want to go and see for yourself if what you made up, because now you're not doing it for what you made up would happen. At least if you go and try, then you figure out. Or maybe if you don't like it, you can always come back. And I think there's this incredibly, really, really helpful thing. And the funny thing, the famous thing about like, I don't know, when you speak in public, that usually is terrifying all the way till the first word. And then once you're speaking, it goes away. Because what's scary wasn't the public speaking, was all the stuff I made up about it.
Right.
But when you look and you catch yourself like, oh, I'm inventing, let me discover, then you kind of go, oh, the only way to discover is just jump on that stage and see how it feels. And I feel that if you shop like that, even if you find out like, oh, it does feel horrible, that at least you experience that. Right? Otherwise, you just kind of live inside your head. So that's beautiful. Yeah, people are loving it. Thank you so much, Doreen. Inventing versus discovery is a great distinction. That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Doreen. Discovery, feeling, and observation instead of inventing. The value of silence and listening. Oh yeah, Nicole. She specified what she was saying before, and she's saying, resting part of our awareness within the game and part of it outside of it is what I'm hearing. And I think that's pretty. It's a cool thing to notice about sort of like having an eye in the action and kind of also at the same time having part of our awareness almost out of it, as in I love what this is pointing to. What do you hear?
It's that search for non-duality, man. It's we go in and we go out, we go in, we go out.
I love it. Thank you for pointing that out. And I guess that's the game, really. That's what we do. We're in and out, in and out. And I think if we kind of just develop a powerful understanding where we are and see that that's the flow, we don't need to resist it. We can just play yes and with this.
Yeah.
And I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Catherine is also thanking you. Thank you so much. Is there like, wrapping up, is there something else that you feel like you'd like to add or some
Can I swear?
Parting wisdom thoughts? You have to swear. That's the rule.
I have to swear? Okay. Yeah. So one of the first things I say when I teach improv, this is again addressing that whole fear thing of about to embark on a project or whatever. But what I say to my students, if you're gonna fuck up big.
I love it.
Thank you.
I think there's nothing to add on this. This is a beautiful way of ending. How can people find you, know more about you?
I'm all over. You can just Google my name. I'm on IMDb. I am the owner of The Recognized Actor, which is holistic marketing for actors. Once you recognize yourself, the world recognizes you. You can also find me on YouTube under Doreen Calderon. I'm on Instagram, Doreen Calderon. So YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, The Recognized Actor and Doreen Calderon, and IMDb.
You heard her, guys. Get your phone and start clicking. Thank you so much. It was fantastic.
Thank you so much, Nico. Happy Memorial Day.
You too.
Bye.